Jacqueline Van de Geer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's so great having you because I've been a fan of your work for so long, and we also know each other personally, and we have mutual friends. We met in Montreal, and I don't actually recall how we met, but you know,
I have the idea that somehow we were connected on Facebook. Like, sometimes that happens to me that I get friendship requests from artists and I love it, and I see their art. I'm like, well, yeah, that's very nice to let that be surfing by on a daily basis once in a while, you know how Facebook works. And then I saw a lot of your pictures and I thought like, wow, what a beautiful pictures, what a beautiful universe. And I'm not sure that I think you approached me once for a series of pictures with clay so that the clay would be on the face
yeah.
and partly on the body and the hands and then from that also we followed each other's work. So I think you also saw some of my work. I'm more in the performative realm at that time, at least, like now with the COVID it's another story, but at that time at least. And yeah, and then we shared a friendship with Clara. And
Yeah, for
yeah,
people who don't
that
know, like
it's
we just
incredible. Yes.
yeah, we have a lot of, common that's the thing with Montreal, which is where you live now, is,
Right.
it is, and I lived there for 3 years. It's a community of artists, and
Yeah.
really, in the end, almost everybody knows everybody, it's a small community. Jacqueline, you are I call you a performance artist, is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But at the moment, I'm also doing visual arts because I'm in an artist residency now in Saint-Jean-Port-Joli, in an artist center called Est Nord-Est. And I have a huge studio, which is amazing. And yeah, whenever I have that, I go back a little bit to my visual arts. So I make collages and I picked up photography now, yeah, and sometimes that just happens, like that I do other things than performance art. Like I know that in 2016, I was 3 months in Leipzig in the Pilotenküche, and there I kind of picked up also collage. I wrote a lot of texts. In the end, I made a paper mache costumes, and eventually I made with a collaborator who was a very good cineast, like because yeah, that's another story. We made a little video. So yeah, there's a friend of mine in Rotterdam that called himself always an omni artist, and I find that a very nice name because yeah, I'm a performance artist, but sometimes I'm much more in theater, sometimes I'm much more into movement, sometimes I'm even using puppetry to make my point or my story or my atmosphere. But yeah, I think in the end it's all performative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah.
conversation I just had actually with singer musician Julie McInnes, who I don't think you've met in Montreal. She was
Mhm.
a cello player and singer for Cirque du Soleil, and she also does visual art. And so we discussed that artists sometimes you're an artist. You're going to express
Yeah.
yourself with whatever method works best for you. Would
Yeah.
you agree?
Yeah, I would agree that. And there were times that I was very, very confused about it and that I really thought that I had to choose something. And yeah, and then I would think like, no, now let's say, no, I'm an actor because now I had some roles in small films. So I'm an actor now. And then people would ask me to direct a play and I would think, well, I'm not really a director. And then they say, yeah, but that's what we like. I was like, all right, I'll do it. And then, and then I thought, yeah, maybe I'm a director then. And then I would do performances and I would think, yeah, maybe. So I'm very happy with terms like that we have nowadays, like, interdisciplinary. I like that a lot because basically that gives you a kind of freedom and that takes away this little pressure that you actually I put on myself, like, oh, make a choice, be an adult, make a choice, be a professional, make a choice, and I'm like, yeah, let's not go there. Let's just allow yourself to play, to discover, to research, and then whatever medium is calling me, I will explore. And sometimes, very surprisingly, it works for that specific performance or for that specific project. Like now, I'm doing a lot of photographs, but I wouldn't call myself a photographer. But doing it on a daily basis for this specific project I'm working on my own aging process.
Yep.
Well, in a few weeks I will be 62, so I no, but I see like some wrinkles are never going to go away. Even if I would spend $300 for a La Mer day cream, they're not going to be away unless I'm going to fill them up with fillers and Botox, which I won't do, like because yeah, I'm like that. Yeah. Uh, and I see like, I can see that I am in this transformation, in the start of a transformation that I'm thinking, yeah, in 15 years, my my body and my face will be very different because, yeah, maybe not the expression, and it won't be that all of a sudden I will get a big nose, but no, I'm getting saggy here and there, and yeah, gravity does its work, and sometimes, like my skin won't recover a sunburn anymore. I will be forever having a kind of semi-alcoholic red nose. I have an eternal triangle with my décolleté. It's just that the skin doesn't do that anymore. It's still there for me, but it doesn't do it anymore. I have veins that are blue. And yeah, for instance, when I taught the children classes, theater classes, they would look at my hands, and I have these veins that are really on my hands, and they will ask, Miss Jackie, what is that? Yeah, and then I would say, "Well, that's because Miss Jackie is really getting old now."
But it is something for the regular person, aging is already traumatic, right? Like you said, a lot of people do Botox or they do
Yeah,
creams or whatever.
yeah. Well, I use
For an
cream, but
Oh,
yeah,
sure, a lot of women do, even men.
yeah.
But the thing is, like, for an artist, it's a whole other story, especially people who are actors, people who use their bodies, people who are dancers. Like, a dancer cannot or typically doesn't continue their career after, I don't know, maybe 40 because their legs and their knees, everything hurts. Um, for you as an artist, what does it feel like to be growing older?
Yeah, I must say I find it very interesting. In a way, I find on a personal level, because with me as an artist, I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist, but I'm not only an artist. So for me, it's always intertwined with other levels of being, like, like being Dutch, being an immigrant, being a person of a lower class family, being my own little whatever that center is, my relationship with people, encounters, all kind of things. So I find aging very, very interesting in a sense that, but okay, let's try to focus it on art. That how do I say that? I find it interesting to see that there are prejudice, and especially in, like, of course, in the theater and the film world, when you, and that's also judgmental on my side, but when you generalize it, you will see that the older, especially a woman, let's be gender specific here, gets, the less important and interesting the roles are. Like very often you're the grandma or the mother, or very often you're a good person. It's nice to be a good person. I try that on a personal level, but it's like, come on, isn't Lady Macbeth a wonderful part,
Hmm,
right?
yes.
It's like, because it's so complex, right? But I do think that things are changing a little bit lately. I do think that this ageism thing is, amongst other things, in transition. So that is very good. But yeah, I kind of that's a kind of a battle, also kind of internal battle that I think, well, I'm not young. So that means that I'm radical in a softer way. I'm still radical, but much softer than when I was younger. And I do recognize that when I'm with younger artists, because I do a lot of things with younger artists, which is really wonderful. Younger artists reach out to me, which is really wonderful. And I guess that's because of my wild side and my not very domesticated side. But I also see that there is a softness now growing in me that I think like, wow, that's interesting that is happening now. And that is also happening basically kind of in my art, that during the years, I work a lot of the times in my performances interactive. I really try to break a little bit this kind of distance between an artist and the spectator or the participants. I really try to make a kind of soft environment without being a granola hippie, although I love granola hippies. But yeah, no, come on, no, but just to forget a little bit, like the last 2 years, I was working, for instance, on a series performances that was called "You Are the Performance," and my goal in those performances was actually to make a very safe environment where people basically at some point were making the performance and I could leave. And actually, one time I did leave, and the people were still limbo dancing under their quotes. I let them first write quotes about art because I introduced quotes about art made by quite famous artists. And of course that was a selection, that was a selection, like, but for instance, I got like tous les grands artistes sont des amateurs by Eric Satie. I love that quote. That's so great. Like, that breaks the ice immediately. People think, oh, "Whoa, what's that?" And then I think, yeah, but the word amateur, it's actually a very honorable name. So I like to work with that nowadays, and I think that maybe 30 years ago I was much more radical and much more polarized about things, and now I'm now this kind of container of memories and experiences, and there's still memories to build and experiences to be lived. Don't get me wrong, my life is not over, far from that, but I do realize that I already seen a lot, and I've already lived a lot, and that I've already worked a lot, and that feeds my practice actually at this moment also.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanna talk a little bit about your becoming an artist when you were younger and even just realizing it's an interesting time in my own life right now because I lost my job, my full-time day job a
Yeah,
few
I
weeks
know
ago.
that. Yeah, yeah.
And it put everything into question, right? My whole identity, who I am, what I wanna do with my life, things like
Yeah.
that. And one of the things I always ask my guests who are artists is whether or not they had a family that was welcoming to their arts, who supported them to become artists. Because I did not. My family was very traditional, working class, and they really wanted me to be happy and to have a job, but they never supported any artistic endeavors. So I'm curious to know if you were in a position where your family supported you or not.
Yeah, that's quite a nuanced story for me. I'm as well from a working class environment, and I do notice that actually nowadays a lot of artists, especially young artists, there's not many people that are from a working class, and I really that pains me. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. To be honest, I really think that if we're talking about change, that is very, very often, class is very, very often a very underestimated emancipational process. Anyway, That being said, I'm from a working class family, and that also has its advantages because that keeps you very grounded and keeps you, well, when I say you, I mean me, of course, uh, very, very real in a certain kind of way, like I also like to simplify sometimes things, not to make it simpleton, but just like for instance all the phrasing and all the words in the arts. I really saw that changing, and I'm like, ugh, like seriously, why would you say things so complicated when you can interchange them by very simple wording that also can be very beautiful, by the way. Anyway, that's being said, going back to your question, sorry about that, but you know me, I'm a tree with
Okay.
many branches, and you really have to get me, okay, Jackie, the question, and I will totally appreciate that. But like my parents loved art. But like my father was a member of a book club because that allowed him to buy a book for a reasonable price every month, and he was very, very proud to build a library, and my parents took me to Walt Disney movies. My parents took me to the museum from time to time, but that didn't really meant that they wanted me to become an artist, because that is very uncertain, and especially for that time frame. I'm from 58. My parents were growing up during the Second World War. My grandparents were struggling with shitty jobs, I'm sorry to say, like really shitty jobs, like in the harbor of Rotterdam, like carrying bags of grain 8 hours a day. It's a shitty job and
Yeah.
underpaid, So they
Yeah.
came from crisis. So they had in mind I would study, and then ideally something like history or something like that, and then become a teacher. And that was artistic enough. So no, they weren't happy. No, they weren't. And my grandmother from my dad's side, she was really very concerned about, yeah, but when you're going to do theater or dance, they're all prostitutes. And of course, in her days, it was often like that, like yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then the whole family. Then I did art school, and then I did some things, and yeah, I must say that is difficult because I was kind of, you know, spreading my wings, going to other layers, other levels of life, meeting people from other backgrounds, with richer parents or middle class parents, people that already knew how to eat with a fork and a knife, all that kind of thing. And yeah, my family was a little bit like, where's she going, and why doesn't she just stay with us and be normal, and have a normal job, and marry? Why isn't she married? Why doesn't she has a family? What is she doing? What is this art? She's not on the television. I don't see her in the publicity. And then, thank God, I got a little part in a movie, and that movie was sent on the television, and that really changed everything. Then it was
Wow.
okay.
So it
Yeah,
literally took that, amount of time.
yeah.
And I mean, how did you make a living? I think that's the question, I think, for people who, who didn't really have a lot of support growing up to be artists. You're always scared of hitting rock bottom. You're always scared of not having anything. Did you just fight off that fear, or like how
No,
did you deal with that?
I've never been. I've never been. No, I've never been. No,
You've
I
never been
no,
scared of
no, never.
insecurity?
And I never considered myself poor, even though when I look back, I'm like, I was very poor, but I never considered myself poor. But it's just, I think that maybe that's, maybe, I'm not sure. I don't, but maybe I make big mistake and you get like lots of comments like, this woman, she's judging the North American culture. But you have to realize I was growing up in the Netherlands. I was growing up by a family that knew, even though they didn't have a lot of money, how to use money, which is really a great asset, I must say. and like just doing things in the sale or having groceries from the season, and and always being just happy that you have food. You have food and a roof. What more do you need, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah, on
Right.
the pyramid of Maslow, actually, art is not the top. I'm sorry, folks. I think art is important, don't get me wrong, but on that pyramid, it's not the first thing, it's not the second thing, it's not even the third and the fourth thing that you need to kind of survive. And of course, we don't want to stay in survival mode, but nevertheless, it taught me something, and I'm very happy with that because it taught me that I can do a lot with almost nothing, which is really a good talent. It's really good. And then also, I must say, I was lucky enough to be in a school system in the Netherlands when the Netherlands were still very rich. So basically, I did two studies. I did art academy in Rotterdam and I did theater school in Amsterdam. And there, I didn't have to pay back. That is,
Wait,
of course, that
was the
that
school free?
it was not free. They lended you the money to go to the school because your parents were from a low income. But then basically, after the schools, they implied a kind of code, and they said, you know what? We said we lended it you without interest, but basically now it's fine. You don't have
Oh,
to pay it
wow.
back. That was, of course, like, that is amazing. That has changed big time. It's not like that anymore, but yeah, that was. And then basically after the school, yeah, the social security system was still very good, so I would get money from the government, but at the same time I could do pay unpaid projects, but that gave me a lot of experience. And I must say also, when I was immigrating in Canada, the first 5 6 years, it wasn't very great. I lived on of my savings for a part, and then another part I could earn money. But yeah, there, it paid off to have been brought up with, like, I don't need much. Then I will, yeah, then I will just eat rice and some vegetables and maybe an egg, and that's nice too. That kind of thing. And there also, I did a lot of things like what people would say for free. But at the same time, I thought I got to know people and people got to know me. And that is very important. That has been very important for me because I remember after, in my third year, I think, second or third year of my immigration, I did a performance for a fundraiser for street artists and clowns, for crying out loud. They asked me to be part of that. That's so nice, because you do things and people think, oh, this pleasurable person. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to do something. And yeah, I don't know. I wasn't thinking very right in my brain, Julie. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to lie on a table, and then with etherical music, I will have this purple, deep purple mauve velvet on me that with lighting, with a soft lighting, will shine and reflects. And then I'm going to tremble, and then it will be as if I'm levitating. I will put on my arms and my feet, and it was really beautiful and very etherical, but
Okay.
it was a fundraiser for clowns and street people.
You
So,
went all the way.
so I was lying backstage already on the table, and then the number before me was a clown's number, and the people were laughing, laughing. They were all like, ha, 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 ha. And I was like lying there and thinking, I'm not sure if what I chose to do here is such a good idea, but yeah, what can I do? And before I knew it, all of a sudden, you feel that the people are lifting up the table, and I thought, well, up I go, you know. And then it was dark, and then this beautiful Greek solemn music started, and I could hear some people saying, Tabernak, what's that? And I was thinking, yeah, I don't know what is that. But I
Oh,
thought,
man.
yeah, but I thought by myself, should I change it? And then I thought, no, I can't change it. This is what I have to do. So I started to tremble. And I did this number, and then, it was 10 minutes of trembling and levitating, and then slowly the veil would, it was all very etheric. But I got them. I got them. So after 2, 3 minutes, the people kind of hopped over in my sphere. But now it's coming. The next day, I get an email, and it's from a theater company that I greatly admired. And they said, "We saw you yesterday. It was beautiful. We have a grant for La Chapelle. It's a show about Marguerite Duras, but we're going to do it very very chappy, very collage, very alternative. And yeah, we would like you to join us. And this is the salary. Do you think it's enough for you?" I started crying on the spot behind my
Oh,
computer.
yeah.
I thought, like, wow, man. First of all, the money was much more than I ever earned in Canada, and yeah, then the most important thing was for me to do something with this group of people. And then on top of that, it was inspired by the text of Marguerite Duras, which I'm really a fan. I love that, that it's very simple language, but multi-layered. So just to say that sometimes you don't know, sometimes it's not about money, sometimes it's not about wording, sometimes it's just being at the right time on the right place and doing your thing. Because trust me, the first minutes that I was trembling under that cloth, I was thinking, why am I doing this? why, why, why?
It's but at the same time, Jacqueline, it's interesting because you chose to go to Montreal. And
Yeah,
Montreal in Canada is a city that, for people who have never lived there, a lot of people have visited Montreal, but you don't really get a good sense for it unless you live there. But Montreal and Quebec in particular are very supportive of artists,
yeah.
are very supportive of the arts in general. They throw a ton of money into it. Maybe not as much these days, but they definitely have much more than any other Canadian city. I'm curious, why did you go to Montreal? Why not New York City, which is would have been probably another option for you?
Well, I must say, I like New York City is very interesting city, of course. Like, well, pro-COVID, I have no idea how it is now. Like, but let's not get there. But what I see in New York City is that there is a kind of level of humanity that is lacking for me there. I see these peoples are struggling to pay the rent. I see that there's a hierarchy between people with money, without money, and so on and so forth. And even though I love New York City's, like for instance, I love the Flux Factory, beautiful initiative by people that you know try to make an alternative space, and there are many spaces like that. But it's quite it's a big chunk to digest, I find. And I come from a small city in a small country. So what I liked about Montreal the first time that I got there, and of course it was on invitation, so that is nice. You have a host, and it was in the summer. Ha ha ha. So yeah, all very nice. But what I like is it was not only artistic, but it was also like I find the quality of living is really high. It's not very costly for a big city. It's even though maybe some people will disagree with me, but for me, coming from Europe, I find Montreal a very, very safe city, especially for women. I seldom feel unsafe. Sometimes things happen, but it's very seldom. And yeah, and of course the amount of art was overwhelming. But what I loved, especially also from Montreal, is that there is a niche for every kind of art. There is a niche for every kind of art. You can go to the big Place des Arts, you can go to the very big Bell Center, and you can put yourself in a living room with some people. And there's
I
also art, and it is not snobbish in that extent in
Yeah.
Montreal. It's also not snobbish, like in the Netherlands. when you say you're an artist, it's like, oh, do you get subvention? Do you get paid? And I'm like, that's a very weird first question to ask. Like, I don't, I do, I do I look very skinny? Do I look like, I don't know, like for me, of course, it's important to be paid. Don't get me wrong, and I'm happy to get be paid more and more and more. But no, and I'm happy that I'm here in a paid residency for crying out loud. It's amazing. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to value myself less during the times that maybe that's not the case because it's always a kind of a wave. It's like tides. It's it's like that. That is the game of the arts. Like, yeah, you kind of have to love that and handle that with elegance to keep going because otherwise why? It's not 9 to 5. It's not.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting as an artist like myself who is used to the 9 to 5, right?
right.
The idea for me is absolutely terrifying, but I think, the more I get to know people like you, the more I spend more time thinking about, or
Mm.
perhaps the more I spend time not thinking about it,
I
the
would
more
yeah,
I find it is becoming more and more acceptable. The idea of just going with the flow, of just,
yeah.
embracing the unknown. I think that's something that needs to, when you're not born with that kind of natural, nonchalance like you are, it's something that takes some time, right, to settle in.
Yeah, but I wasn't born with this kind of nonchalance. But I think that is one of the things that my personal aging process has provided me with is that at some point I have become much more easygoing with it, and at some point also I had to embrace it because otherwise you can't go on like that. But for sure, when I was younger, I was yeah, much more, yeah, nervous. Not so much about money, maybe because the system in the Netherlands was so good and I wasn't used to a lot of money anyway. So, that helps, if like I guess when you're born in rich family and then yeah, then you kind of make a jump into an abyss of like, woohoo. But yeah, if you're not born that you always have to drink the best espresso to be content, just saying,
Mhm.
no, but that exists. There are people
Yeah.
that are very upset with that, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm not obsessed with that. I like a good espresso. Don't get me wrong, but if I don't have it and I have just a black filter coffee, I'm also happy. It's
Yeah.
fine. It,
Exactly.
it it doesn't make much, a difference in the quality of living for me. But self-esteem that has grown, and also like when I was younger, I really tried to make art that looked like other artists, kind of like to prove to everybody, but probably to prove the most to myself that I was an
Mm.
artist, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like and yeah, and I was also much more into yeah, competition. That somebody had an event or something, and I was thinking by myself, why don't I have that? Instead of thinking, oh, that's great, I'm going to go, which is much more has much more become my attitude because my attitude now is like there's space for everybody and there's space for every kind of art, and you don't have to be world famous to prove to people that you are an artist. Doesn't matter, even if nobody thinks you're an artist. Like, look at the what was this beautiful? What was his name again? Darcy or something? Did this guy in Chicago that had such a unhappy youth? His mother died when his sister was born, and then his dad gave him and his sister after a few years away to an orphanage, and then what's his name again? Darger, Henry Darger, that's it. And that guy was cleaning hospital rooms most of his life. He rented one room. He was a great artist. He made thousands and thousands and thousands of drawings, beautiful drawings, crazy collages, wrote a big book about those young girls that were saving other girls, and that was all kind of stemming from his terrible childhood. It was amazing. And then he ended up in the hospital and he said to his landlord, like, yeah, like, throw everything away. And then they went in his room and they discovered everything. And now it's in a museum in Chicago and it's worth lots of money. And, it's outsider art, like they call it. I saw that museum and I must say, wow,
Which I hate
tremendously.
that term, I have to admit, I hate the term outsider art,
Oh, I
just
don't
because it makes
care.
yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, "Eh, dude's an artist," you know? Y but yeah, it's one of those, she kind of terms that
I
they
think
need to put, right?
no, I don't think so. I think I would be proud to be an outsider artist. For me,
That's the rebel in you.
yeah, it's a rebellious name, and it's a kind of, and I'm like, and also like, yeah, when you're outside the system, there
Yeah.
is an authenticity. Amen, hallelujah. You know,
Right, right.
you start to sing the gospel there in that museum. It's it's incredible. No, the thing that I find very, very disturbing sometimes, but I don't know if that happens here, but I know that it happened in Rotterdam, and I had many discussions about it. Back in the days, there was an art center for people with like a mental disability, and very, very stunning art. Very most of the time, I thought the colors, the composition, the way very inhibited drawing and the energy that splashed. I really, and then there were people that were from my art academy and said, "Wow, that's not art because an artist they were conscious." And then of course I felt a loser because I thought by myself, I'm not working conscious. Not really. Oh,
Mhm.
oh lordy, like for years I thought like, I better say yes and amen because otherwise they will find out that I'm a cheat, And now I'm also embracing that I think, yeah, there's artists that are very conscious and they have a concept and they're conceptual artists, like you have outsider art, you have conceptual artists, and I'm more like an intuitive artist. And that's not so much abracadabra, by the way. That doesn't mean that I'm totally like in like a Zen mode and say, "Ooh, I touch my aura." No, ooh. But of course, I have a kind of an idea or a kind of an interest. For me, it's very often it's an interest that becomes an obsession, and then the obsession becomes something else, and it goes away in a direction that I never thought it would go. Like, for instance, here I thought, oh, I'll probably make videos about my older hands and my wrinkles and my this and my that. And I might still do that because I promised it in my application, and it's still interesting. Don't get me wrong. But I'm actually now working on personas, all the personas that I have lived until in a few weeks I will be 62. And I'm pretty sure that everybody, in a way, lives personas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is something that I think everybody can relate to,
Yeah, that's
depending on your life experience, you know?
yeah, yeah. But I never thought that beforehand.
I wanted to ask you about how your process works. You spoke about how you get obsessed, you get interested in something, you become obsessed with it, and I find that that's the exact same thing for me, where something captivates my interest.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
chase after it, like a
Mhm.
dog chasing after a squirrel,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
eventually, with time, I lose interest, and then something else comes along. Do you find that that's how it works for you, or do you find yourself sometimes trying to manufacture ideas?
It's an interesting question. Like, sometimes I get this obsession, and then through the obsession I get to a point that I think, okay, so this is what I wanted to talk about or work with, and I can finish it. Sometimes I'm in an obsession and it's nice for a while, and then I'm thinking, yeah, but it just stays an obsession. And then it kind of starts to bore me a little bit. And then I put it aside and I think, well, that was a nice exercise researching this and that. It doesn't matter. I'm very easy with that. Maybe much too easy.
Right.
Who knows? But I'm very easy with that because I'm like, well, yeah, like that happens. That's kind of normal. That's not everything can become complete. Or I just accept that. I embrace that. And sometimes I do manufacture things, and that very often is happening when there is a kind of a time frame. So there's a kind of a pressure of doing something within a time frame, and you promised to do it there and there. And then I manufacture it, but then basically when I perform it, I have my manufactured skeleton, not skeleton.
Mhm.
And then basically by, yeah, and that's of course very pro COVID, basically by how the audience or the participants, as I prefer to call them, breathe with you, I can put some other flesh and bones and other color of eyes that I thought that skeleton needed. And then
Right.
basically after the performance, I'm like, oh, that was kind of nice. Oh, so that was that about. But then I work with a structure, which
Right.
is manufactured. That's a man. But I'm not against that actually. I think you need a structure, but at the same time, yeah, also a little bit, like, okay, you have a structure, but how you're going to treat that structure, or, yeah, I don't know. If I feel that my prologue is going to be endless of a performance and the middle is very short, and I feel just at that moment, that's it. I can still have my line through, but yeah, I follow that. And of course, because of the participants have some say in my performances very often. I work like that. Yeah, I cannot manufacture a too tight corset. That's not possible. And
Yeah.
I have
That's
to accept everything that comes from the participants, because otherwise why would you invite them to participate and then say no? That, yeah.
What's it like for you right now? Because you're somebody who feeds off other people. You are someone, like you said, you always invite people to participate in your creation during your performance.
Yeah.
What's it like for you now?
Well, I must say at the moment, it's kind of fun because I work a lot on my own, and but I must say, of course, I have this great studio, and yeah, I don't have to worry about money for 2 months, and then I can do whatever I want. So I'm a bit self-centered. I'm making these selfies as all those personas, and that's kind of cool. But sometimes I post them on Facebook, and then of course it's very nice that you get a lot of likes and that kind of thing. So you're still feeding off of, like a kind of resonance. But yeah, the start of the COVID, I found that very difficult, and I feverish wrote a play, my remake of Three Sisters by Chekhov, and yeah, I wrote a lot of things. And then I kind of discovered, networks from all over the world, people that asked for little videos, people that asked for little performances. And that was kind of fun, I thought, to be connected with like a Turkish community, or a community in New York, or a community in Chicago, or a community in Norway, and do things. And it also opened me up because I'm not very technical. But actually, I'm less and less afraid to make videos. I'm less and less afraid to make pictures. I'm less and less afraid to allow technology to come in. Uh, It's not grand shows, it's still very homemade, but I'm like, that's fine. Like, I'm very easygoing with myself by that.
And I mean, hey, you're recording a podcast now, so I mean,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
I'm allowing myself to yeah, to discover that. And basically, my last collaboration was with a group of young people, Complot 14, and we made a group exhibition, and we worked for quite a while on that. And my idea was actually to make a 4 to 5 hour long live performance. And it was all about a suitcase that I found at a flea market in Brussels in December 2019. When I was visiting my mother, I also escaped for a few days to Brussels. And yeah, that suitcase was actually at the garbage bin, so not for sale. And I opened it. I thought, "Ooh," I was curious, and there were all kind of artifacts and all kind of program books and pictures and records and postcards. And I was going through them, and I thought, my God, those are the leftovers of a life. Those are the things that people didn't even want to sell anymore. And that made me think. I thought, my God, I have also so much stuff. What's going
mhm,
to, and it's so important for me, the stuff is so important for me, right? But
yeah,
yeah, when you're not there anymore, it's not important at all anymore. It can just go there. And then I wondered, like, I wonder who this person was. And then I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of it, not the whole suitcase, because you can't do that anymore. And that would have also be a little bit too dark, I found, but just a little bit. And I brought it with me to Montreal. And then I thought, oh, I would actually like to, you know, expose these items, and I would like to make a performance where I'm playing the records and showing the postcards, but I'm inventing and reinventing all the time in a loop possible lives of this person because I have this freedom, right? The items are there.
right.
But that, of course, couldn't be materialized by the COVID. So then I thought, okay, I wrote some monologues. I'm going to put them with the items. And then I thought, well, maybe it's nice to have a typewriter and ask people with like the gel to type also and to add. And so that was a nice idea. And that actually happened. And that wasn't people, I think people just wanted to type on an electric typewriter,
Of
which is
course.
fine, by the way. But anyway, no, but people contributed. But then I thought it's not enough. And then I thought, well, I wrote 10 possible lives, but then I thought, well, maybe I can make a loop in a video. And then I recorded it myself with my computer. And for the first time, I considered iMovie. I always thought that would be much too difficult for me. And I thought, oh, actually, it's very easy. And I had a lot of fun with that. And then one of the persons of the exhibition, he's a photographer, very good photographer. He said, well, you know, I will record you because like it was, I don't know. So he recorded me, and I must say it looked much more slick. Of course, the lighting was good, and the voice was better, and all that kind of things. And I got good responses on that basically, and I thought it's still interactive. I thought because I still invite the people to write monologues, and
Right.
yeah, and then the three persons, they're talking about their lives, and they're very random lives, and I got really heartwarming feedback on that people said, oh, it's so nice because you look ridiculous, because I had like wigs, and one time I have black wig with a black beard and a black mustache, and I'm wearing a man's shirt, but I'm not a man. It's very obvious. But the moment he starts to talk, after 2, 3 minutes, it's weird. You forget about it. You think, oh, that's a real person.
Right.
So yeah, that was fun for me to do that. And then I thought, oh, actually, I like video. There's possibilities there.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
getting into technology when you're not used to it is, it can be intimidating, but
yeah,
like you said, the minute you start to actually play with it, you lose the fear, you know? It's like,
yeah,
starting podcasting, for example, was absolutely terrifying because I knew nothing about the equipment whatsoever. I was, like, Facebooking, like,
yeah, yeah,
"Does anybody know how to use a
yeah.
mic?" You
And
know?
there you go, and you do it so well, and
Yeah, truly.
I love the émission, c'est quoi l'émission in English with Clara?
Episode?
Yeah, episode. Yeah, it's really fun.
Thank you.
So yeah, no, no, I must say, in that extent, strangely enough, this whole isolation thing made me realize, like, well, if I cannot see the people, I have to see the people in another way. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we don't have much time left, but I
Mhm.
have to say, Jacqueline, is that you are somebody like, I know a lot of people in the arts, and, a lot of people have had to build walls around them, for various reasons because they worked in tough industries or whatever. But you're
Yeah.
somebody that I have never known to have a wall around you. You're the same Jackie, in essence. I mean, of
Right.
course you've evolved, but in essence, you're the same person. You give yourself to people, even people you don't know, I find, uh, openly. You just
Yeah.
is that a skill that you've acquired? Is that something that you've just always been that way, or do you actually
No,
have a
no,
wall?
I've been very, very shy when I was 17, like, until my 22nd. I was very, very shy, and for sure I've had a wall around me, and I can have layers in life that sometimes I will have a wall around me to, that you think semi protect yourself or whatever. But I think also with aging and developing and getting more self-esteem and getting to know yourself a bit better and getting to know therefore also what you're interested in and what your calling is. Like, because I really think I have a kind of a calling to reach out to people in performances, and I have a kind of a calling to, it gives me a lot of joy. It gives me a lot of joy, kind of serious fun to break walls. And for me, that's also a political act, even though maybe other people will think, well, no, that's not politics. But I find it a political act to break down walls, to break down this barrier of not daring to speak, or not daring to act, or not daring to be there simply together with each other. I find it, that's for me, that's the radical softness that I like to expose, and other people do it much more radical and much more politicized, and that's also very valuable, like, because I think it can all exist next to each other, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I have to wrap this up.
Yeah,
I'm
it was nice.
curious. It was
Great
beautiful.
questions. Great
Thank you.
questions. Yeah.
Uh, if people who don't know you, wanted to learn more about your work or maybe watch it online, is there a way for them to see any of your performances, or do you have a website or a
I have
Twitter
a
account
web
or anything?
I have a website. I have to update it. Oh lordy, well, I'll do that after my residency. I got this website thanks to the wonderful support of the Montreal Art Interculturels, because at some point Michael Topping said to me, "You need a website. Why don't you apply for a mentorship for a website? Why don't you? Don't you? Don't you? Don't you? Don't you?" I thought, okay, I hear you, hear you, hear you, hear you. And so I have a website. I'm not very good with documentation. I have to, admit I'm not good with that. I'm not from a generation either that documented everything. I know it's important. The website most of the time is pictures that people generously took, sometimes snippets of performances, but in that extent, I must say I'm really a live performance artist. Now, of course, it's going to change a little bit because I'm going to do more and more videos, but I don't know how to. But maybe on a private session, we could talk about it, because you're very savvy with that kind of things. Because it's true, and I don't want to sound indifferent because I do know that documentation is very important. My heart is pounding, but it's also maybe radical to say, but it's not my number one interest.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it. I hear this a lot from a lot of artists. Don't worry about it. You're not actually very different from a lot of the artists I've even interviewed for the show where I had not much to put in terms of social media or whatever. And that's okay because, like you said, you're a live performer. If they happen to be in Montreal, they can come and see you perform once COVID is done and you travel a lot around the world and you
Yeah,
do
I
shows
travel a
around
lot.
the world.
Yeah, yeah, it's very nice.
So,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
yeah, that was also before well,
Yeah, of
next
course.
next year in October, I will be having an exhibition and performance slash in Leipzig in Germany.
Okay.
Well, fingers crossed that that still materializes because we don't know, so that's already something. Yeah, I love to travel, and especially for my interactive work, it's so nice because it really kind of teaches you to be very sensitive on what is happening
Mhm.
because every culture, every country is different. Like even like I come from Holland, you would say, "Wow, that's not so different of North America," but that's not true. And even
Yeah,
in North America, it's such a big thing. Like Quebecers are probably the same but slightly different than people of Nova Scotia, or like there's always this little fine tuning, what I find so interesting about humans, how they define themselves.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it's
Yeah, I think
yummy.
it's gonna be, all I gotta say is I would love to have you on the show again because we can even talk
Ah,
about
thank
those
you.
differences at great length, so, But
All
anyway,
right.
Jacqueline Van de
Thank
Geer,
you.
thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a very special episode, and, it meant a lot to me. Thank you.